Hello. Welcome to Esoterica and Nonsense, a podcast where we discuss myths, legends, folk tales, fairy tales, supernatural phenomenon, and religions from around the world. I am your host, Annabelle, and today is a rainy day, and we are going to hear stories from Turkey. I'm very excited. Turkey is a place that I've always wanted to go. And it is one of the most culturally rich center points of the ancient world. At one point, it was a part of the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. And it is this beautiful little bridge that connects what we consider the Middle East to Western Europe. And I just think it's such a cool, flippin' little piece of land. I've always wanted to go. I want a Turkish rug. I want to have Turkish delight. I want to eat Turkish dishes. I want to just live the whole fantasy. So, let's hear some magical stories from Turkiya. I don't know how to say it properly. I'm just having fun. Okay, so story number 1 is called The Wizard Dervish. A long time ago lived a padishah. A padishah is like a shah, like a principal ruler, an emperor, if you will. So a long time ago lived a padishah who had no son. As he was taking a walk with his lala one day. What's a lala? We need to Google this. Lala, Turkey. A lala is a tutor or a statesman. Oh, very good to know. You learn something every day. Okay. As he was taking a walk with his lala one day, they came to a well, near which they stopped to wish. A dervish suddenly appeared and cried, "All hail my padishah!" A dervish, just in case if you don't know, is like a religious man. You may have heard the term like the whirling dervish. Ooh, we should do an episode on dervishes. But it's a sect of, I think it's their own religion, right? We might have to Google this too. Oh, no. So dervish is a Sufi sect of Islam. Oh, that's so interesting. And they're priest-like men. Just to keep it simple. Okay. So the dervish cries, "All hail my padishah." At this, the padishah answered, "If you know that I am the padishah, then can you tell me the cause of my sorrow?" The dervish drew an apple from his breast and said, "Your sorrow is that you have no son. Take this apple, eat half yourself, and give the other half to your wife. Then, in due time, you shall have a son. He shall belong to you till his 20th year afterwards, and then he shall be mine." Oh shit, this is giving Rumpelstiltskin, baby. I don't know, dude. Maybe you should just conceive on your own because this guy's going to take your son and then you won't have an heir. No. But he's probably going to do it. With these words, the dervish vanished. The padishah went home to his palace, cut the apple, and sharing it with his wife according to the instructions of the dervish. I knew he was going to do it. I knew he was. Everyone wants a son when you are a ruler because you want an heir. The thing is, you're not going to have an heir when the Rumpelstiltskin dervish comes back and snatches him. What are you thinking, bro? You're just going to have to keep trying. Sometime later, as the wizard dervish had promised, the little prince came to the palace, and the padishah, in his great joy, ordered the happy event to be celebrated throughout his dominions. When the boy was 5 years old, a tutor was appointed to teach him reading and writing. In his 13th year, he began to take walks and go on journeys, and soon afterwards he took part in hunting excursions as well. When he was nearing his 20th year, his father began to think of finding him a wife. A suitable maiden being discovered, the young couple were betrothed. But on the very day of the wedding, when all the guests had assembled in readiness for the ceremony, the dervish came and carried off the bridegroom to the foot of a mountain. Yeah, dude, like, what were you expecting? He literally told you the deal from day one. What do you, like, this is so crazy, bro. He uttered the words, "Remain in peace," and he went away. In great fear, the young prince looked around him, but saw nothing more alarming than 3 white doves flying towards the river on whose bank he was resting. As they alighted, they were transformed into 3 beautiful maidens who entered the water to bathe. Presently, 2 of them came out and resumed their bird forms and flew away. As the 3rd maiden left the water, she caught sight of the young prince. Much astonished at his presence, she inquired how he had come there. "A dervish carried me hither," he answered. Whereon the girl rejoined, "That dervish is my father. When he comes, he will take you by your hair and hang you on that tree and flog you with a whip. Dost know? He will ask, and the question you must answer, I know not." Having given this advice, the girl, transforming herself into a white dove, flew away quickly. Wow, she sounds hot. Are you kidding me? A girl who transforms into dove form? Like, she sounds super hot. Presently, the young prince saw the dervish approaching with a whip in his hand. He hung the youth by his hair to a tree, flogged him soundly, and asked, "Dost know?" Dost know what, bro? When the young prince answered, "I know not," the dervish went away. For 3 days in succession, the youth was beaten black and blue. But when the dervish had satisfied himself that his victim understood nothing at all, he set him free. "Did a youth and a maiden pass this way?" she inquired. What? Oh, okay. I was confused, but the story explains itself. When the youth was out walking one day, the dove came to him and said, "Take this bird and hide it. When my father asks which of these 3 maidens you desire, point to me. If, however, you do not recognize me, produce the bird and answer, I desire the maiden to whom this bird shall fly." Wow, Shorty's really looking out for him. He's so lucky. Wow, she has a crush. The next day, the dervish brought with him the 3 maidens and asked the youth which of them pleased him best. The youth accordingly produced the bird and said that he desired to whom the bird should fly. The bird was set free and alighted on the maiden who had instructed him. She was given in marriage to the youth, but without the consent of her mother, who was a witch. Oh yeah, now the story's getting interesting. A dervish, a magical wizard dervish, and a witch have 3 hot daughters who are dove girls. Like, sign me up, dude. While the youth and the maiden were walking together, they saw the mother coming after them. The maiden, giving the youth a knock, changed him into a large garden, and by another knock changed herself into a gardener. When the woman came up, she inquired, "Gardener, did not a maiden and a youth pass this way?" The gardener answered, My red turnips are not yet ripe. They are still small." The witch retorted, "My dear gardener, I did not ask about your turnips, but about a youth and a maiden." But the gardener only replied, "I have set no spinach. It will not be up for a month or two." Seeing she was not understood, the woman turned and went away. When the woman was no longer in sight, the gardener knocked the garden, which became the young man again, and she knocked herself and became once more a maiden. They now walked on. The woman, turning back and seeing them together, hastened to overtake them. The maiden also turned round and saw her mother hurrying after them. Quickly she gave the youth a knock and turned him into an oven, and knocked herself and became a baker. The mother came up and asked, "Baker, have not a youth and a maiden passed this way?" "The bread is not yet baked. I have just put it in. Come again in half an hour. Then you may have some," was the answer. At this the woman said, "I did not ask you for bread. I inquired whether a youth and a maiden had passed this way." The reply was as little to the point as before. "Wait a while. When the bread is ready, we will eat." When the woman saw she was not understood, she went away again. As soon as the coast was clear, the baker knocked the oven, which became the young man, and she knocked herself back into the form of a maiden, and they pursued their way. Looking back once more, the woman again saw the youth and the maiden. She now realized that the oven and the baker were the runaways in disguise, and hurried after them. Seeing that her mother was coming, the maiden again knocked the youth and changed him into a pond. Herself she changed into a duck swimming upon the water. When the woman arrived at the pond, she ran to and fro, seeking a place whence she could reach the opposite side. At length, seeing she could go no further, she turned round and went home again. The danger over, the duck struck the pond and changed it into the youth, and she transformed herself into the maiden as before, upon which they resumed their journey. Wandering onward, they came at length to the birthplace of the youth, where they entered an inn. Then said he to the maiden, "Remain here while I fetch a carriage and take you away." On the road he encountered the dervish, who seized him and transported him immediately to his father's palace, and set him down in the great hall where the wedding guests were still waiting. The prince looked round at all of them and rubbed his eyes. Had he been dreaming? What can it all mean? He said to himself. Meanwhile, the maiden at the inn, seeing the youth had not returned, said to herself, "The faithless one has forsaken me." Then she transformed herself into a dove and flew to the palace. Through an open window she entered the great hall and alighted on the prince's shoulder. "Faithless one," she said reproachfully, "to leave me alone at the inn whilst you are making merry here?" Saying this, she flew back immediately to the inn. When the youth realized that this was no dream, but fact, he took a carriage and returned without delay to the inn, put the maiden into the coach, and took her to the palace. By this time, the first bride had grown tired of waiting for so eccentric a bridegroom and had gone home. So the prince married the dervish's daughter, and the wedding festivities lasted 40 days and 40 nights. And that is the story of the wizard dervish. That's so funny. I wanted to hear more about the witch mom. I want to hear the story about how the wizard dervish and the witch mom met and their love story and her pregnancy. Were they triplets? Did she have 3 separate pregnancies? Like, they are obviously magical witches themselves. I want to know more about them. Hello. Let's have some water, everyone. Let's take a water break. And that's going to lead us right into story number 2. This story is called The Silent Princess. There was once a padishah who had a son, and the little prince had a golden ball with which he was never tired of playing. One day, as he sat in his kiosk, playing as usual with his favorite toy, an old woman came to draw water from the spring which bubbled up in front of the mansion. The Shahzada, merely for a jest. Oh, I guess that's the word for prince. I love that, Shahzada. The Shahzada, merely for a jest, threw his ball at the old woman's jug and broke it. Damn, this prince is a little bitch. Without a word, she fetched another jug and came again to the spring. For the second time, the prince threw his ball at the jug and broke it. The old woman was now angry, yet fearing the padishah, she dared not say a word, but went away and bought a 3rd jug on credit, as she had no money. Returning a 3rd time to the spring, she was in the very act of drawing water, when again the young prince's ball struck her jug and shattered it to pieces. Her anger could no longer be suppressed, and turning it toward the Shahzada, she cried, "I will say only this, my prince. May you fall in love with the silent princess." With these words, she went her way. The prince ere long found himself brooding on the old dame's words and wondering what they could mean. The more he dwelt upon them, the more they took possession of his mind, until his health began to suffer. He grew thin and pale, he had no appetite, and in a few days he was so ill that he had to remain in bed. The padishah could not understand his son's malady. Physicians and hodjas were summoned, but none could do any good. One day, the padishah asked his son whether he could throw any light on the strange complaint from which he was suffering. Then the boy described how 3 times in succession he had broken an old woman's jug, and related what she had said to him, finally expressing his conviction that neither physicians nor hodjas could effect his cure. I believe a hodja is like a medicine person, like a sorcerer or something. Let's Google it. Hodja. Hodja. Oh, a hodja is a Muslim schoolmaster. Okay, got it. So like a spiritual teacher. The prince asked his father's permission to set out in the quest of the silent princess, for he felt that only in this way could he be freed from his affliction. The padishah saw that the boy would not live long unless his mysterious disease were cured. So after considerable hesitation, he gave his permission and appointed his Lala to accompany the young prince on his journey. Toward evening they set out, and as they took no care of their appearance, in 6 months they looked more like wild savages than a noble prince and his Lala. They had quite forgotten rest and sleep, and thought of eating and drinking never occurred to them. At last they arrived at the summit of a mountain. Here they noticed that the rocks and the earth glistened like the sun. Looking round, they saw that an old man approached them. The travelers inquired the name of that region. The old man informed them that they stood on the mountain of the silent princess. The princess herself wore a sevenfold veil, but that fact notwithstanding, the glitter they observed around them was caused by the extraordinary brilliance of her countenance. The travelers now inquired where the princess resided. The old man answered that if they had proceeded straight on for 6 months longer, they would reach her Serai. Hitherto, many men had lost their lives in vain by attempting to elicit a word from the princess. This news, however, did not dismay the prince, who, with his Lala, again set off on the journey. After long wanderings, they found themselves at the summit of another mountain, which they noticed was blood red on every side. Going forward, they presently entered a village. Here the prince said to his Lala, "I am very tired. Let us rest a while in this place, and at the same time make some inquiries." Accordingly, they entered a coffee house, and when it became known in the village that the travelers from a distant land were in their midst, the inhabitants came up one after another to offer their greetings. The prince inquired of them why the mountain was blood red. He was informed that 3 months' journey away lived the silent princess, whose red lips reflected their hue on the mountain before them. She wore 7 veils, she spoke not a word, and it was said that many men had sacrificed their lives on her account. Yeah, she sounds super hot. We love her. On hearing this, the youth was impatient to put his fate to the test. He and his Lala accordingly set out to continue their journey. After many days, they saw another great mountain in the distance and concluded it must be the dwelling place of the object of their quest. In due time, they arrived at the foot of the mountain and began the ascent. Above them towered a proud castle, the residence of the silent princess, and as they approached near enough to see, they observed that it was built entirely of human skulls. Sick! The prince remarked to his Lala, "These are the heads of those who have perished in the attempt to make the princess speak. Either we attain our object or our skulls will be used for a similar purpose." Oh my god, I'm literally obsessed with this princess. This is so fucking hot. What's interesting, like this is me just like, supposing, but I have been to the, what is it called? The ossuary, the bone ossuary in the Czech Republic. And, Eastern Europe isn't crazy far from Turkey. And they said that they traveled for like over 6 months. So what if they're like in Eastern Europe right now and she's like some kind of like Czechoslovakian dark princess? This is hot. She sounds super gothy. These like blood red mountains and like a skull palace. Like, yeah, she's like the original goth. Before attempting to enter the castle, they took up their lodgings in a han for a few days. All this time they heard nothing but weeping and lamentation. "Oh, my brother, oh, my son." Inquiring the cause of the general grief, the travelers were answered, "Why do you ask? It appears you also are come to die. This town belongs to the father of the silent princess. Whoever wishes to attempt to make her speak must first go to the Padishah, who, if he permits it, will send an escort with the hero to the princess." When the youth heard this, he said to his Lala, "We are nearly at the end of our journey. We will rest a few days longer and then see what fate has in store for us." They continued their sojourn at the Han and took daily walks about the city. While thus occupied one day, the prince saw a man with a nightingale in a cage. The bird caught his fancy so much that he resolved to buy it. The Lala instructed him against it, reminding the youth that they had a more weighty affair on hand. The prince, however, refused to listen and finally purchased the bird for 1,000 piastres. And he took it to his lodging and hung up the cage in his room. Once when the prince was alone and wondering by what means he could make the princess speak, somewhat saddened by the gloomy reflection that failure meant death, he was startled to hear the nightingale thus address him. "Why so gloomy, my prince? What troubles you?" The prince trembled, not being sure whether it was the bird or a spirit that spoke to him. Growing calmer, he thought that perhaps it was the manifestation of Allah's grace, and accordingly told the nightingale the story of his love for the silent princess, and that he was at his wit's end to think of how he should get into her presence. The bird replied, "There is nothing to worry about, my prince. It is as easy as can be. Go this evening to the serai and take me with you. The sultana wears 7 veils. No one has ever seen her face, and she sees no one. Put me in my cage under the lampstand and ask the sultana how she is. She will vouchsafe not answer, however. Then say that she will not condescend to speak, and you will conserve with the lampstand. So begin to speak, and I will reply." The prince followed this counsel and went directly to the Padishah's palace. When the Shah was informed that the newcomer wished to go to his daughter, he received the prince and endeavored to dissuade him from his intention. He represented that thousands already had tried in vain to make the princess speak. He had vowed, however, to give her in marriage to the one who could succeed in eliciting a word from her. This is kind of reminding me of the story of what the rose did to the cypress, like a really similar premise. On the other hand, he who tried and failed forfeit his head. Yeah, so this is getting brutal. Like, we're at the crunch right now. Our prince has to have her reply, or else he's going to lose his head. As the prince might see for himself, his daughter's castle was built entirely of human skulls. Hardly had the youth... Nope. The hardy youth could not be moved from his purpose. He cast himself at the feet of the Padishah and vowed either to accomplish his object or perish in the attempt. Thus there was no more to be said. The Padishah ordered that the prince be taken into the presence of his daughter, the princess. It was evening when the youth found himself in the princess's apartment. He put down his cage under the lampstand, bowed himself low before the princess, inquired after her health, and spoke also on matters of less importance. No answer came. Then said the prince to the princess, "It is getting rather late, and you have not yet favored me with a single word. I will now address the lampstand. Even though it had no soul, it may have more feeling than you." At these words he turned to the lampstand and asked, "How are you?" And the answer came directly, "Quite well, though it has been many years since anyone has spoken to me. Allah sent you to me this day, and I feel as glad as if the whole world were mine. May I entertain you with a story?" This is an iconic plan. The prince nodding assent, and the voice proceeded, Once there was a Shah who had a daughter who three princes desired to marry. The father said to the wooers, "Whichever of you excels the others in enterprise shall have my daughter." The young men accordingly set off together, and coming to a spring, they resolved to take different directions in order to avoid any collision with each other's pursuits. They agreed, however, to leave their rings under a stone at the spring, and each to take his own up again when he returned to the spot, thus furnishing an intimation to him who returned last of all that the others had already reached home. The first learnt how to go a 6 months' journey in an hour, the second how to make himself invisible, and the third how to bring the dead back to life. All three arrived back simultaneously at the spring. He who could make himself invisible said the Padishah's daughter was very ill and would die in 2 hours. The other said he would prepare a medicine that would restore her life again, and the third volunteered to deliver the medicine. Quicker than lightning, he was at the palace, in the chamber where the princess lay dead. Hardly had the medicine touched her lips that she sat up as well as ever had been seen. Meanwhile, both the others came in, and the Shah commanded all three to relate their experiences. The nightingale paused for a few moments and then resumed his story. "O my Shahzada, which of the 3 princes thinkest thou best deserved the maiden?" The prince answered, "In my opinion, he who prepared the medicine." The nightingale contended for him who acquainted of the others of the princess's condition, and so they hotly disputed the matter. The silent princess thought to herself, "They are quite forgetting him who could go a 6 months' journey in an hour." As the dispute continued, she could endure it no longer, and lifting her 7-fold veil, she cried, "You fools! I would give the maiden to him who brought the medicine, but for him she would have remained dead." The Padishah was immediately informed that his daughter at length had broken her silence, but the princess protested that she had been the victim of a ruse. The youth should not be considered to have succeeded in his task until he had induced her to speak 3 times. "Now," said the Shah to the prince, "if you can make her speak twice more, she shall belong to you." The youth left the monarch's presence and went to his lodgings and began to ponder the matter. While deep in thought, the nightingale said, "The sultana is angry at having broken her silence and has smashed the lampstand. So tonight, put me on the other stand by the wall." Accordingly, when evening was come, the prince repaired with his nightingale to the sarai. Entering the princess's apartment, he put the birdcage on the stand by the wall and addressed the sultana. As she disdained to answer, he turned to the stand and said, "The princess refuses to speak, therefore I will converse with you. How are you?" "Quite well, thank you," came the answer at once. "I am glad the sultana would not speak, otherwise you would not have spoken to me. As it is, I will tell you a story if you will listen." "With great pleasure," replied the prince. "Let me hear it." So the nightingale commenced. In a certain town there once lived a woman with whom 3 men were in love. Balji Oglu, the honey-maker's son, Jajdi Oglu, the tallow-maker's son, and Tairji Oglu, the tanner's son. Each used to visit the woman in such ways that neither knew of the other's visits. While brushing her hair one day, the woman discovered a gray strand and said to herself, "Alas, I am growing old. The time will soon come when my friends will become tired of me. I must make up my mind to get married." Next day, she invited the 3 lovers to visit her at different hours. First arrived was Jajdi, who found the woman in tears. Asking the cause of her grief, he was answered, "My father is dead, and I have buried him in the garden, but his spirit appears to torment me. If you love me, wrap yourself in the winding sheet and go and lie for 3 hours in the grave. Then my father's spirit will haunt me no more." Saying this, the woman led him to the open grave which she had made. As Jajdi would have drowned himself for her sake, he cheerfully donned the winding sheet and lay down in it. In the meantime, Balji, who inquired of the woman why she wept. She repeated the story of her father's death and burial, and giving him a large stone, told him to go to the grave, and when the ghost appeared, to hit him with it. Jesus, this is a dark plan. No sooner had Balji taken his leave and gone to the grave, then came the 3rd suitor, Tairji. He also sympathized with the woman and inquired what was the trouble. "How can I help but weep," said the woman, "when my father is dead and buried in the garden? One of his enemies is a sorcerer. He is now lying in wait to carry off the body. As you may see, he has already opened the grave with that intention. If you can bring me the corpse out of the grave, all will be well. If not, I am lost." The words were scarcely uttered before Tairji had gone to the grave to take up Ganji and bring him into her presence. But Balji, thinking there were 2 ghosts instead of 1, endeavored to hit both with the stone. Meanwhile, Ganji, believing the ghost had struck him, sprang out of the grave and dropped the winding sheet. Then the 3 men recognized each other and explanations were demanded. Yeah, this was a crazy-ass plan. "Now, my prince," said the nightingale, "which of the 3 men deserved the woman the most?" "I think Tairji." But the prince was for Balji, who had put himself through so much trouble, and so they commenced to argue as before, taking care to avoid mentioning Gadji. The princess, who had been listening attentively to the narrative, was disappointed that the mentions of Gadji, the merits of Gadji were not taken into consideration, and she delivered her opinion with some warmth. The news that the silent princess had again spoken was carried to the Padishah in his palace. Yet once more must she be compelled to speak. As the youth was sitting in his room, the nightingale informed him that the princess was so furious for having been tricked into speaking a second time that she had broken the wall stand to pieces. The next evening, therefore, he must put the birdcage behind the door. The 3rd and final interview found the princess no more amiable than usual, and as she refused to open her mouth, the prince tried his conversational powers on the door. The door, or rather the nightingale behind it, related the following story. There was once a carpenter, a tailor, and a sofa traveling together. Coming to a certain town, they hired a common dwelling and opened business. One night, when the others were asleep, the carpenter got up and drank coffee. Oh wait, I realize I totally misread that, because how can it's a softa, but I don't know what a softa is, because we have a carpenter, a tailor, and a softa. Softa. Okay, a softa is a student of theology, so like a religious student. Okay, so we have a carpenter, a tailor, and a religious student, the softa. Okay, so one night while the others were asleep, the carpenter got up, drank coffee, lit his shibok, and formed an image of a charming maiden out of small pieces of wood lying about the room. A shibok. Chibok? Shibok. I also don't know what that is. I'm learning so many new words today. Okay, it's a pipe. That's what I thought. Okay, so he's smoking his pipe and he's arranging little pieces of wood into the image of a beautiful maiden. So having finished, the carpenter lay down again and fell asleep. Shortly afterwards, the tailor woke up and, seeing the image, made suitable clothing for it, put it on, and went to sleep again. About dawn, the softa awoke and, seeing the image of the lovely girl, prayed to Allah to grant it life. The softa's prayer was heard, and the image was transformed into an incomparably beautiful living maiden, who opened her eyes as one waking from a dream. When the others rose, all three men set to disputing as to the possession of the lovely creature. Now to which, in justice, should she belong? In my opinion, to the carpenter. Thus the nightingale broke off. The prince thought the maiden should belong to the tailor, as on the previous occasions a lively debate ensued. The princess's ire was aroused at the softa's claim being neglected, and she exclaimed, "You fools! The softa should have her. She owed her life to him. She therefore belonged to him and nobody else." Hardly had she finished speaking than the news was carried to the padishah. The prince had now rightfully won the princess, silent no longer. The whole town put on a festive appearance and began preparations for the wedding. The prince, however, wished his marriage to take place in his father's palace. And great was the rejoicing when he arrived home with his bride. 40 days and 40 nights were the festivities kept up, and the old woman whose jugs had been broken was installed in the palace as daddy. I'm sure. Wait. I need to Google what this means. This obviously daddy. I think it means like maybe nanny or like handmaiden. I'm not sure. I'm trying to look it up right now, but it's spelled like Dady. But anyway, the woman whose jugs had been broken was installed, let's say, as a handmaiden. A post she filled happily until the end of her days. And that is the story of the silent princess. Yeah, I mean, you heard it here, folks. All you need to do to get a lady talking is make it so that her opinion must be shared. That was so cute. I love hearing stories of princesses and magic. It's so much fun. That was a fun, cute little story of some Turkish fairy tales. If you like my podcast, please email in. Check out my Patreon. Monthly donations help me make episodes. Buy yourself a t-shirt. I hope that you have the best day and that you take really good care of yourself. And I will catch you next time. Over and out.